or coining the phrase, our nation is pregnant with expectation. How has this budget, in your views, met these expectations? With that, I'd like to hand over to the Honourable Minister of Finance, who will commence with his statement, and we'll allow for each panelist to have their statement before we start with questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. First of all, let me thank Simmons and Storms, KPMG, and the NCCI for arranging this panel discussion. I was in fact prepared to give you a mini budget speech for about an hour, but I will not do that. I will just share one or two ideas with you that are intrinsic in the budget statement, and then we can debate it. I think what I want to start off with is that this budget is standing on the very firm foundations that had been built previously. So it is not a budget that tries to undo all the good things and all the achievements that we have built over the years. So it stands on a firm foundation that maintained macroeconomic stability, it maintained its pro-growth approach, it maintained its pro-poor approach. What it, however, did, I think it refocused the emphasis of where we put our resources and what we want to achieve with these resources that we have. Master of Ceremonies quite rightly said that within that framework there are possibilities to harvest low-hanging fruit better, meaning we can make greater impact with what we have. One of these examples was the improvement of the social grants to our elderly, to raise it from $600 to $1,000 per month. That brings our elderly out of, or well above, the poverty line, which is 530 according to statistics per month. But it also does something else, and that is that we have realized that these social grants in areas where perpetual poverty is very evident contributes not only to the well-being of the individual beneficiary, but it benefits the whole extended family and the community in those poverty-stricken areas. And the impact on poverty reduction is much larger than the individual benefit that it holds. Poverty reduction is impacted by social grant by 10%, and that's only the social grant. So it's a very powerful and efficient tool to immediately make impact on especially extreme poverty, but at poverty at large. Of course, the second element of poverty reduction that the budget re-emphasizes is the support it gives to small and medium-sized enterprises to develop and become part of the productive economic society of the region. And that links it to our industrialization policy, our growth at home strategy, our regionalization policy. And I think that is an important point that we want to stress. Poverty, the main poverty alleviation method that we want to embark upon is to become productive, enhance our productive capacity, make small and medium-sized enterprises meaningful links in any value chain that we develop, create a larger value share for the economy, and distribute that wealth in a more credible way. We believe that SME development is absolutely key in wealth creation, in improving the value share, of economic activities along value chains that we developed through our industrialization and growth at home strategy. So we have the two-pronged system. One is strengthening social networks, be it through grants, be it through grants to elderlies or orphan grants or the like, but probably more importantly, the productive sector and the SME development that I've touched upon. There was much talk about whether our budget is sustainable, but before to sustainability, there's another important aspect on poverty reduction, and that is equip our nation with the necessary skills to become productive. So, education is not only a social activity, it is, in fact, a very serious economic activity. Education is the strongest empowerer. If all of us are equipped with skills, not only academic skills, but also vocational skills, then our economy has a much better chance to improve its productivity. So education and the allocations, the very significant allocations to education, are the third leg, if I may say so, towards poverty eradication. But we're now talking about sustainability. I think that is one of the areas where we stand on very firm foundations from previous budgets that my predecessor, Honorable Gelba, so ably handled. Namibia is standing out on the African continent as one of the most stable economies with sustainable growth, albeit not exceptionally fast, but I think we maintained an average growth of just under 5% for the last 25 years. And after the financial crisis, which we weathered exceptionally well, in fact we did not go into recession, we maintained even positive growth during the crisis, and the year after it, low now, 1.2%. But what was very exciting to observe is that after the crisis, we rebounded very quickly and very strongly with a growth rate of 6.4%, and that was maintained in the 5%, 5.5% level since then, which shows that the economy has some resilience. We have managed to diversify it somehow. We have shielded against other shocks that other economies did not do so well with, and our neighbor in Angola in the north is one example. One of these economies that has a large dependency on a single commodity. If that commodity price changes, the economy is either doing very well, if the change is for the better, but if it goes down, then the change is very significant, seriously. We have diversified our economy. Somehow we are not anywhere near to where we want to be as an industrialized nation, but we have managed it, and we have therefore built some resilience, some buffer against shocks. Our debt levels are, by international standards, very good, very low. That is confirmed by both our sovereign credit ratings that we have received from Fitch and Moody. It's an investment grade, stable. And again, here Namibia was able to beat the tide. Around us, with the exception of Botswana probably, the gradings were not so stable than they were in Namibia. They were in fact downgraded in some cases. But we did beat that tide, and we kept our investment grade rating as stable. So, sustainability we have maintained, and it remains a cornerstone of our fiscal policy. I think our resource allocation pattern or model that we follow to stimulate economic growth is reflected in the fact that our operational expenditure has been, the increase in operational expenditure has been rather flat or not very strong, 6% or so, but the expenditure increase in the capital budget has been much higher. We feel that we have to invest in productive infrastructure, in the logistics sector, that's transport, all 3 legs of transport, in the power sector, but also in the housing sector, and again in the education sector, where we still continue with improving our ability to get kids into proper schools. So infrastructure development is the key and the main expenditure that we are focused on. I think in conclusion, therefore, one of the strong points that we have in the budget, in my opinion, is one, we have to align all our activities to our priorities. If we say we want to alleviate poverty, then everything that we do must support that objective. When we say we want to industrialize and develop value chains, then all we do should support that drive. And that includes resource allocation. To, of course, take tough decisions. It's not an easy balancing act. But in this budget, we tried to shift into that direction. And if the framework in which we are working is not conducive to that, then we have announced some reforms and reviews of those areas that need to be reviewed to do exactly that, to support the main policy of poverty eradication, to be inclusive, no one should be left out, and to make sure that the economy is growing and that growth in wealth and in jobs is distributed. So there are a number of reviews that we are visiting. I have announced a tax review. Today I wanted to share with you what we do in the financial sector. There are a number of reviews in the banking sector, in the non-banking sector, that are needed to create this conducive environment that we can use better our savings, that we have a better handle on capital flows, that we have a banking sector that services SMEs better, accessibility remains secure. We don't want to take risks on the deposit side, but we must improve the instruments, the basket of instruments that we offer to our economic sector to become more meaningful and better. So there are a number of reviews that we have. On the pension side as well, we of course want to secure pensions. They should not be subjected to undue risk. But what we have available in terms of contractual savings, in our opinion, can be better leveraged for development. That needs some legal tweaking, again, reviews that we want to look into. And then we have some challenges that we have to reach. We are still an open, very small economy that is vulnerable to external shocks. We want to reach that by better integrating ourselves regionally and globally. We want to, as I said, diversify our economy, build more resilience in it. That resilience, to a certain extent, is given by the peg to the South African rand, but it has, of course, not done away with the fact that we are remaining a small and open economy. So there are these external areas that we have to deal with as well. I think I have misused my time allocation, but I'm happy to answer some questions if you have. Thank you very much.
We totally understand. Thank you very much for that. I'd like to proceed to ask Mr. Johannes to share his opening statement.
Thank you. Firstly, appreciation goes out to Andrew Johnson and Simonis and KPMG and the sponsors for having invited me to participate in this panel. I think every democracy basically faces very difficult choices when it comes to budgets, because the gaps between what is required and what needs to be done and what can be afforded is very wide. So you need to make difficult choices when it comes to budgets. What governments are trying to do is to indicate policy direction, and what they're trying to do is to build some confidence in the management of the economy. And what they're trying to do during budget is seemingly trying to meet seemingly conflicting objectives. On the one hand, in our case, to address inequality, but on the other side, try to stay within what they can afford. The minister actually put it, our pegs are in the ground. So if you ask me what my views are on the budget, overall, I think the minister has done well in coming up with a positive budget. There are no big issues, maybe as he put it, some form of continuity that was coming up there. What are the positives for me in this budget from a business point of view? I think the first one is, I said, we need to restore hope to the youth in our country. Many of the young people in our country are unemployed. So for reasons of social stability, if we have got so many young people who've got no stake in the future, we are looking for trouble. And you see that at least there is an effort to set aside 303 million of Namibian dollars to be spent on initiatives focused on the youth. That's a very good start. So we need to applaud the government for that. The second one is around private-public partnerships. I think the government cannot do everything in this country. Personally, we need to rush that legislation, because the country is crying out for quite a lot of development, and the government has got some macroeconomic stability that they need to manage, and they need to live within the means. So there is an avenue of private-public partnerships really to go and invest in our country. For the financial services, what was quite good is clearly the three objectives. If you operate in financial services, the last thing you want is unpredictability. So it's a clear signal sent out. We want to do three things. We want to promote access to finance, we want to modernize the regulatory regime, and we want to make sure that ownership of financial institutions is something that we need to push. That provides, if you operate in that sector, some stability. And finally, probably the positive thing was, although year-on-year basis, the increase in total expenditure was only in nominal terms, about 7%. There was a big chunk increase in the development side. I would have loved to see that we are a little bit more brave and probably increase the overall expenditure. Because if you look at the fiscal position of the country, I would like to believe, and I know that's a choice the government has made. Our deficit was 3.7, 4.2, and it's going to be 5.3. That's probably the choice they have made. I would have thought, we could have a little bit been braver to probably push the envelope in terms of spending. If that's the choice we have made, we probably need to push the other through public-private partnerships. It doesn't have to be the balance sheet of the government all the time. So, if you ask me, what are the concerns that we have got? My big concern is, as the minister said, around SACU revenue. SACU revenue on that pool, I've seen some estimates in South Africa. They said in 2012 it was it in about 12 billion, and last year we are talking about roughly 50 billion. And in 2018, they're estimating that SACU revenue is going to drop to about 37 billion. It has never happened, but for the first time I see the South African government is projecting a massive reduction in SACU revenues due to the imports. I would have thought by having imports and the weakening currency that maybe you'll have an increased pool, but the forecast is that's going to be a massive reduction in 2018 down to about 37 billion. So we need as a country to find a big alternative source to fund that. That's the one concern that I've got. The second one is around policy coherence. It's quite good to hear from the Minister that there should be alignment. I was always wondering, to what extent we have got policy coherence in our country. If we deepen and improve and expand the port in Walvis Bay, for instance, if you look at the logistics value chain, and you don't do anything with the railways in our country, and the railways is where they are currently, I can see most of the business people are struggling. The mines, the factories, with our railway line, and Transnamib is going through a very difficult time. So if you really want alignment and policy coherence, you need to expand the port, but also attend to the railways and also attend to the entire chain. So it's quite good that we hear from the Minister that they have decided there should be alignment. The other thing is, if you really want to create jobs, you need to align the labor regime to be aligned to the job creation intentions that you have got. If we say we're creating jobs and the labor regime is not consistent and supportive of that, we probably have got big challenges around that. So that's probably a summary of my 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Johannes. Adeline, I'm going to ask you to go next before we conclude. James.
Well, from a tax perspective, there was not much different from last year. But some of my comments, or the first comments I'd like to raise, is the budget focuses a lot on SMEs, support for SMEs, mentorship, development funding, etc. But we didn't see anything coming from on the tax side. Last year in the budget, the presumptive tax for SMEs was announced, or it was said that was going to be looked in by government, but we haven't seen anything come through on that side. Also, some of the suggestions seem to be in contradiction for what we're saying we want to do for SMEs. I understand the rationale behind wanting to put a guarantee on the import VAT accounts for companies, but that's effectively, depending on how you are going to be implementing those guarantees, that might take away cash flows from the very people or the very companies we need to grow. So it will be interesting to understand from the Minister how exactly those guarantees are going to be put in place. And then I'm also very happy to see the investigation into the effectiveness of the tax system. And specifically looking into efficiency, I think it's going to be, the revenue agency is going to be very valuable in introducing efficiencies. But once again, for the SME partner, director, accountant, those people are running around, spending a lot of their time on tax administration at the moment, as opposed to growing their businesses, which is concerning. I want to commend the Minister for pursuing greater transparency in the budgeting process with the mid-year review and the pre-budget statement. I hope that private sector will be more involved on the legislation side going forward, so that we can provide comments on proposed changes to legislation or new legislation. We'd also welcome explanatory memoranda which explains the government's rationale behind introducing legislation, because that's going to help us to interpret legislation more effectively if we understand the spurs in which it was introduced. On the environmental taxes that's going to be introduced, that's pretty much in line with global, what's happening globally, so I don't think that's much of a surprise. I was just wondering what's happening on the flip side. So, for example, incentives for introducing renewable energy projects. Are we thinking around that? Is anything going to happen with regard to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Adeline. And last but not least, James, over to you.
Thank you, Afra. I just want to extend a warm welcome to everyone and thank you for attending this event. I know tomorrow's Easter and everyone wants to probably get to the coast. But to be honest, I was expecting a fairly cautious budget by the Minister. This being his first budget speech, not wanting to stick out his neck too much. But I must say I was pleasantly surprised at some of the boldness that the Minister took. And especially in the first half of the speech, I know there's been a lot of commentary in the news, etc. On the second half, where the numbers are sitting in, not always been very positive. But my view is that it's a very positive budget, and it sets the tone for the next 3 to 5 years of government spending and the government's philosophy, and the things it's struggling with, and also how it intends to tackle the problems that are facing Namibia, and also how it will address the unemployment issue, the high income disparities, the narrow base on which the Namibian economy operates, especially in terms of mining. I'm not going to be too long because most of my points have already been mentioned by the panelists, and I don't want to bore you with that. But if you, in the first few pages, the Minister introduced 4 priorities over the NTEC period, and if I read between the lines, it's very pro-business, very pro-SME development. And the feeling I get is that the government wants to engage with the private sector and PPPs, etc., in order to help it solve these problems facing Namibia. So if I look at the four priorities, the first one would be to promote inclusive growth or economic growth. And that would be by diversifying the economy away from where it's currently mostly extractive type industries, mines, etc., and exporting raw materials and then buying them back already with all the value added. And that can only happen through industrialization of the economy. The second point underneath that priority would be to develop functional and technical skills. We've seen that with the education grants, or the free education, and also to provide SME support and programs to help SMEs grow and harnessing the PPPs. And then what struck me was also the making development finance more accessible to these guys. Obviously businesses need finance to expand, and I'm sure a lot of the small SMEs don't have much security that the banks require. So there needs to be another mechanism to provide finance for them. The second priority that the Minister mentioned was to reduce poverty and improve social welfare. We've seen that already through the increase in pensions. Just a note on that, I think in the Namibian setting we should see it more as a social grant, not just a setting, because as I'm sure you all know, a pensioner tends to support a lot of family members and has a large number of dependents. And we did some research a few years ago, but this was more on the manufacturing side. So we're saying that, so what we found was that each manufacturing job would support 10 mouths, more or less, and that's immediate family independence, and also in the economy, such as shopkeepers. Now, you could probably equate that to pensioners, the same kind of ratio towards pensioners. And then the second point I want to highlight underneath that priority is the support and creation of decent jobs and self-employment. Again, very private sector orientated. The third priority that the Minister highlighted was achievement of prosperity and wealth. And that steps underneath that, or points underneath that, would be to increase local ownership and the share of value addition within Namibia, develop facilities to support SMEs, and also provide mentorship for SMEs. We all know businesses are not that easy to run. We need a lot of skills. It's a large, wide skill set that is required, from finance to human resources to admin to tax. So I think that is sorely needed in Namibia. And the fourth priority is the strengthening the performance and efficiency of the public sector. And I'm sure we've all got our gripes with some public officers that we've had to deal with. So that's all well, but I think talk is cheap. The difficult part comes in actually implementing this, and I hope that the government or the cabinet and ministers have all the support they need to enable them to implement these. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister, I see that you've received a number of questions, notably some of the concerns that have been raised around the reduction in the sub revenue and how coherent policy really is. Are we aligning our priorities? I noted that Mr. Gawaxab indicated that we would love to see government be a little bit more brave with expenditure. And when one looks at the perspective of small and medium enterprises and how does one balance your administration with the need to actually be out there and produce. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to deal with some of the questions you've got.
Thank you. Yeah, there were quite a number of them. Let me start at the end. The colleague made a statement that businesses are not easy to run. Governments also not. Let me start with the comment that we should be a little bit more aggressive, more brave, to say that with expenditure. We in fact considered it, and we thought the envelope can be pushed. But then, like all economists, we have one hand and other hands, and we saw actually a red flag with sub revenue coming our way. So we thought if we push the envelope too aggressively, we will lose necessary fiscal space that would allow us to compensate for that revenue downturn that may come. I think we also realized that we do have a drought, and the impact of the drought on agriculture, which is occupying 70% of our economic activity, on a personal level, is a matter that we took into consideration. And then lastly, what we said earlier, we remain a small open economy, and the oil price is one of the examples. We had some benefits from it now, but it turns quickly, and the current trend is not in our advantage. It will increase our import bill. So we had some worries about these red flags that were still on the radar, and we therefore took a decision and said, well, we can rather proceed and look during the little review how things develop and how our ability to address our needs can increase or decrease, and take it from there. That was one of the reasons why we did take a decision for a midterm review. It allows us to be quicker in reacting to what the globe is doing and what the region is doing. And, well, I think it is somehow expected from any Minister of Finance that caution is better than recklessness. Not that I said that you would propose a reckless approach, but I think that's part of the balancing act that we have to engage in. I think he made a comment on alignment, and that he welcomes alignment. I think that is what you also have mentioned. We have to walk the talk. One part of walking that talk is to make sure that all our efforts, inclusive, as I said, resource allocation, are focusing on the priorities that we have set ourselves. Obviously, includes an effort to make the administrative more efficient and get things done in a better way than we have up to now. I think our President is very, very clear about that. If the temperature in the kitchen is too hot, look for a cooler place. And I think that is what carries a much larger message, and that is streamlining, get efficiency gains out of a system that is at the moment having some fat and some inefficiencies in it, so that we can, again, harvest the low-hanging fruits quicker and that the impact is better. One aspect that Johannes mentioned is the labor regime. Yes, of course, human resources is one big resource that must be aligned with these policies as well. But I do not, and we do not believe that labor standards and the alike should be squeezed or pushed into a race to the bottom for the sake of being competitive with our neighboring countries or with the purpose of improving our ratings. We remain a people-centered government. The gains that we get out of the economy must also roll over to consumers, to workers, to our people. So, yes, labor regimes must be aligned, but I do not think it is wise to send us into a race to the bottom where we erode what we have fought for and what we have obtained so far. I think it is more a approach where we have to deepen the dialogue. We have to include all stakeholders in the discussion how we bring these policy changes, how we bring growth into the economy, how we get the efficiency gain. That was all discussed together, and as the President says, pull in the same direction instead of trying to undo what one hand is doing with the other. So, but it is a complex matter, I must say, and we have examples in the region where it is not going so well. On the taxes, yes, taxes on SMEs. You know, if you look around on our continent, what often happens is that because of the severe demand on resources, we tax to death everything that grows. You see a little bit of growth, boom, you tax it. And that is, again, policy alignment. Our tax policies should not do that. Of course, they should make sure that the revenue comes in that we need to fund the budget. But we must make sure that in our overall tax policy, we maintain that element that helps to grow the economy, that helps to grow SMEs, instead of taxing that element that we so desperately want to grow. So taxes for SMEs should again have a balanced approach. In fact, the whole tax system, as I've indicated, is based on a very narrow base, and it's skewed in several aspects. So we have to work at the skewness, we have to work at the narrowness of it, broaden it. And what I have said yesterday, I want to invite the private sector to consult with us how we're going to achieve that. There are, of course, a number of worries that we have. The grey economy is significant. Many activities go parallel to the receiver. We don't know about that. So informal activities need to be formalized so that they become part of the formal system and get the benefits out of being part of the formal system instead of only the negatives. We have a number of examples. We have a host of NGOs, charitable organizations, trusts. All of them do nothing else but corporate business. But they register themselves as something else and avoid taxes. So that is a loophole we must plug. Let them come to the party and join us to build our revenue base.
Sorry, Minister, if I may interrupt you. What I meant around the presumptive tax for the SMEs was not so much to introduce an additional tax, but rather to make tax administration easier for SMEs. So I know, for example, in South Africa, they would use a certain percentage of turnover because an SME would very more easily know the turnover than they would know the expenditure and so on, to be able to have audited financial statements and determine their taxable income via a complex calculation. So, but I definitely, I hear your sentiments and I agree that we shouldn't be taxing them today.
Well, yes, I don't want to create a dialogue, but on the presumptive tax part, yes, we looked at that. But immediately there were a whole host of issues that were put to us that made it more complex. If you take turnover as the only criteria against which presumptive tax is better, then you forget about the actual activity of the entity, whether it is having a large amount of input costs that are paid up front in comparison to other ones. So it can introduce unfairness in the system if your presumption is too simple. So I think we haven't thrown it away, but we thought it is good to discuss with people like you. What are your ideas to bring a simple tax system for SMEs into the system? So I hear you. I think it is not that we are disagreeing. I'm happy that we are agreeing, and I'm looking forward to your contribution when we talk about these tax reviews. But again, just to repeat, the whole tax system needs review, so that we address the skewness and the narrowness of it. And that includes taxes of SMEs, on the guarantee for VAT import. I think the problems that brought us from the private sector is not indicating to us that the principle is wrong. What we have heard is that it is the way we do it that is made cumbersome. The administrative issue much more than the principle. And we are working on that to make the administrative process simple and tight. But on the principle, we are less sympathetic, because the fact remains we are losing significant amounts of that on these deferral accounts. And that must be addressed. We talked about the environmental taxes. Yes, I agree with you. They are very much in line with what is happening in the globe, and they are actually very mild. We talked about energy policy and incentives for green technologies. I think we have, on the energy side, opted for an approach where we want to secure sustainable power generation and delivery of affordable, reliable power by utilizing a basket of sources. And one problem with that is each source of power has its own strength, but also some weaknesses. And I think we have to balance out the issue that we have to have a stable base load, we have to have an efficient peak load supply, and we must have a reliable way that all these different sources are managed through an pretty complex and intricate grid. That's where you store or manage your power, the grid itself. And I think that is the approach that we take. Of course, we realize that alternative power sources like solar, wind, biogas, and the like are the ones that are coming. We have huge potential for solar. We have got good potential for wind. We have some potential for biogas and bush encroachment. That raw material that can be used for power generation. That is all, I think, in the pipeline, and we want to encourage the diversification of the sources of power. I do also think that we are making progress in creating a legal framework for these power purchase agreements, power purchase arrangements. I said earlier that from where I came from, in the Ministry of Trade, I was aware of huge interest from the private sector to partake in the power sector, in the power generation sector. We should not let that go by. It's a potential that we can harness, and it will be good if we make that possible through a legal framework that regulates, makes power purchase agreements possible. Again, also the Honourable Minister of Trade, of Mines and Energy, just before he left, Honourable Calle, answered in Parliament a question on the arrangement that local authorities will put in place to allow UNE to put some solar plants with panels on the roof and get compensated for surpluses. I think that is at a stage where it is just awaiting final approval by some local authorities, then that would be possible. So those are matters I think I'm looking forward to look, and I agree with you, we must look into that quite attentively. There is, of course, more power and the other enablers, whether it is water, whether it is transport, whether it is telecom, internet. There is the big question about price. The big question about tariffs that our utilities ask the consumer to pay, whether we have been able to keep a lid on them, that they are not spiraling out of affordability rates. By consumers, on the one hand, that's for household consumption and so on, but equally important, for industry. If an industry in South Africa or in Botswana pays a quarter less on these enablers, costs, utility costs, we are having a much smaller chance that that business will settle in India. And I think we have to look at that. How do we make ourselves more competitive from that? And again, I think a basket of sources of power, a reliable water system, potable water, a good logistics ability, those are all elements that make us more competitive. And there is a lot of work that we can and should do. I almost took longer than my introductory speech.
I'd like to, if I may, Honourable Minister, allow the other panelists to comment on what you have shared so far. And I'm going to give the floor to Johannes Gawaxab at this point. Also just thinking around what we ended with, I mean, I've heard Mr. Gawaxab say that Namibia has the potential to become the go-to country of Africa. And what is it really going to take, with a political environment that is reasonably stable and a growing economy? What is it going to take for us to fulfill on our potential?
I know the Minister probably agrees with me, at least in theory, that if you really want to grow, if you want to prosper, there are basic elements that you need to look at. And for any economy to grow, you need to attract foreign direct investment. For any economy to grow, you need to make sure the productivity in the system is what it should be. It's going to be very challenging to prosper sustainably without growth. So if you look at our own growth, and we said for the past 25 years we've been growing just below 5%. Last year it was about 6.2%, and for the new financial year we're looking at around 5.3, was it 5.3 or 5.7? That's sort of the estimate that we have grown. So my own take is, are we doing enough in that space to actually grow the economy? And I hear from the Minister that yes, we have increased our developmental spend. I'd like to see the execution rate on that one. On the operational budget is moved from 92 to 98. On the developmental side, it's good to actually increase that. But the execution rate on that one is out for debate, and time will tell us what processes we've got in place to make sure that those things are actually executed. On the developmental side, I still believe that we could have gone a little bit more aggressive without taking out our pegs out of the ground. We could, if we spend on productive assets, I'd like to believe that on the one hand, you spend that, but it's a productive asset. So that asset should have some uplift for you, even if you see the risk coming down the line over the next 3 years, unless you believe that this productive spending has got no uplift over the next 3 years. So if you see a red flag and you do an investment in something that's supposed to deliver goods, you somehow mitigate or de-risk that red flag. So maybe those things have been debated, and at least in theory, that's how I was looking at it, but I can understand why the caution was there, and it was the first budget from the Minister's side. So we can maintain our credit rating if we spend on productive assets that has got definite benefits that can help us de-risk the future. Probably let me leave it there. Probably the audience want to participate.
Okay, we will offer an opportunity for that now. We have a roving mic in the room. Are there any questions at this point?
While we are thinking, there is one aspect that I think I want to touch, and that is, if we increase our resource allocations to the infrastructure development side, and if we look how that money is spent, I think there are some areas where we can improve much better. And if we use the mass housing as an example, here we have a significant project worth billions for a long time, 5 years, 10 years. How much have we done to make sure that we create linkages into industrialization? How much of the building material are we manufacturing ourselves instead of importing? How much of our skills development has been focused to bring about skills in the construction sector, skills in architectural engineering? Have we aligned all that to reap benefit, economic gain out of resources that we ourselves put into the market? And I think we have not done as good as we could. Therefore, the aspects of conditioning these procurements for services, I think is a matter that we must take forward. It is we who must come up with the basic set of conditions when we offer these procurements, and they must contain local sourcing, they must contain local ownership, they must contain local capacity building, local service sourcing, and these elements that induce gain into the economy instead of exporting that gain. Because at the end of the day, that is all wealth creation that then can be better distributed. That's an area where we have to look at. Thank you.
James, you have a comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that, or 2 points. When we export raw materials to another country to be processed, we're basically exporting jobs to that country, because they're the ones doing the value additions. So I think it's very important that we try and do as much as possible in Namibia to help with job creation. Secondly, I think we've all seen the numbers that this year's, or the budgeted deficit of 5.7% of GDP, and that's actually it's been growing year on year. But if you do yourself a favour, you delve into the numbers. We've got about $67 billion government expenditure. Of that, about $52 billion is for operations. That's the day-to-day operations of the government. And if you compare that to the revenue generated by the government of 58, you can see that the government is covering its operational expenses. I would get worried if it's the other way around, if we actually have to borrow to pay for the day-to-day operations. So you can see there's an $8 billion buffer there that the government earns over and above its day-to-day operations, and that's all going into the development budget. So using that argument, you could say that Namibia is actually borrowing for that deficit, which the 5.7% deficit, which is being funded by debt, is actually a big debt, because it's funding our capital projects, which will add to production further down the line. I just want to say that.
Honourable Minister, will you say something? Sorry.
I agree.
Do we have any questions in the audience? We have a number of questions. We'll start with the lady.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Adeline Matsi. I am a medical technologist and consultant. I'm a very big fan of Growth at Home program, and I love the fact that the budget have made provisions for educating our people, equipping them with skills, and moving Namibia to become industrialized. But we did a project last year with partners, including the Ministry of Health, and we found out that our healthcare workers are not very healthy. And it rings the bell to have your doctors, nurses, and pharmacists not being healthy. And then you think, what about the other healthcare workers? I think it's important that we have our people educated, we have them skilled, but I think if they're not healthy, they're not going to be going to work every day. So are there any provisions made to kind of alleviate that? Or I just wanted to know, but anyways, congratulations, the Honourable Minister, for your speech, your budget. But I just wanted to know, are we having anything that we want to make Namibia healthy in terms of our health workforce?
Let's take a few more questions, then we'll be able to have a conversation.
My name is Schmidt. I'm an independent consultant. When I have to expect a reducement of my personal salary, as Namibia has to with regard to the SAP revenue, is it then a very wise decision to go into heavy debts to save a big credit, which will oblige me over many years to pay, since I'm insecure of my income base? This is my first question. The second one is, whom are we really so afraid of that we need to put more than 10% of our expenses in our army? I would like to discuss the army in detail, because also I think the money is badly deployed. But that's another story that is maybe not too long for this subject. And last but not least, my favorite subject, especially with my brother here from another mother, Kulu is a misinvestment. Kulu is not economically viable. It will never pay back its cost. And it will put this country in a debt to an extent that, if I look around, mostly, let's say, the grandchildren of most of you will have still to pay for.
Okay, I think we have a number of issues that have been raised so far. You want me to take it?
I don't have money.
Before we take any more, maybe let's just, do you want to go on to that? Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Thank you very much. My name is Auntie Ann Gebert. They say I must say it again. My name is Auntie Ann Gebhardt from Afra. I'm in the real estate business and also I am an SME. I want to thank you, Honorable Minister, for taking care of us in your budget, and I think your experience in the Ministry of Trade and Industry has helped you to understand better what SMEs can contribute to the development of this country. I just want to find out from you, the challenge that the SMEs had is always not understanding these packages that you have put up so well for us. And it takes a long time. By the time we wake up, whatever was put in place for us is gone. So if you could please make sure that there is a way in which the SMEs understand this budget straight away from the start and they hook into all the packages that they can benefit from.
Madam Moderator, I would like just to respond before the Minister responds on Kutu. Inasmuch as I appreciate and respect the statement made, I beg to differ on the viability of Kutu. It's very unfair, it's very misplaced to say it's not viable. Kudu is a very viable project for this country. Kudu is a resource that belongs to this country. Gas is much cleaner energy than we have got. The Minister and the government clearly state we have agreed a multi-pronged strategy, many sources of energy. It's not only one source. So it's very unfortunate that we play off one source against the other and say solar is the only source of energy for the country. If you just look at what happened at Rossing and if you look at mining and at Husab, and everybody that's in mining will know that Rossing was sitting on this ore. The moment the other players come in and started exploring in the country, they have found resources and deposits that's much richer and greater than what we have got currently at Rossing. Just think about it. If we start exploring at Kudu where we have discovered gas, the whole of East Africa from Tanzania, they are sitting almost now on 100 TCF of gas. So if you do further exploration, I can almost guarantee that Namibia will come across something that they found in Tanzania, they found in all along the east coast of Africa. So just to disregard Kudu is actually very unfair at this stage.
Thank you, sir. Honourable Minister, give you an opportunity to respond to a number of questions that we've received around the safety and security vote as well, the challenge in understanding the measures that are applicable to SMEs, taking care of health workers, and is our debt not too high?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for supporting growth at home. I think it's one of the core strategies that we will embark upon. You tell me that health workers and doctors are unhealthy. Reminds me of mechanics driving scoros. From a health point of view, I think in the budget, on the serious now, we have made significant allocations to health in the past. So at the moment, there was not significant increase, but I think we caught up over the last 5 years or so. And I think our health provision is in need to improve still further. I think there are infrastructure problems, but there are also capacity problems. We have a medical school now. I think they are having growth pains, but it will come. And I hope that health workers look after themselves also. I don't see that that is really the responsibility of the state to say, well, you guys, you mechanics must buy new cars. But I hear you. That was also what the talk. The question on SACU revenue and whether we should embrace a situation where the economy will stop growing. I understood your question to be that we should not take up debt because we have a significant fall in revenues to anticipate. And the answer is just like that. You know, if you are too cautious, of course you will send your economy to slow down or even to stop growing. And I think that is not what we envisage. What we are putting in the pipeline is that, yes, SACO revenue may decline, but we have now to use the time that's left to compensate for that decline with other streams of revenue. We must also, on the expenditure side, make sure that we limit unproductive expenditure to the largest amount, so that we do not influence growth negatively. So there are some correctness in your statement, but I don't think it is such a drastic matter that we have no ability to absorb it. It will be tough to see how and when SACO declines as predicted, but I think we have some space to improve our own revenue streams and seek alternatives. Defense spending. Namibia has been lauded for its political stability. We have been lauded for our active involvement in global peacekeeping, but also regional peacekeeping. It was Namibia who made a significant impact on Madagascar to get it back into a democratic, stable form. We did the same for Lesotho. That's in Southern. We got involved in Zimbabwe. So I think defense spending may appear on the face value of it not to be a productive spending. But I believe that our involvement in Namibia's respect globally largely depended on our defense force and our security and safety networks being reliable, being supportive of global peacekeeping efforts. We ourselves were born out of those efforts. We are a child of international solidarity where other people spend on their defense budgets to help us to get independence, to be liberated, and to get freedom. Now we have taken that policy stance that we must do the same. To keep that respect and to keep that surety. We are not in isolation. We must also make sure that others around us are politically stable and secure for ourselves to grow. So I think defense spending is a matter that is required if we have that policy in mind, and that is what we want. Kulu gas, yes, I think Johannes answered. I don't want to, at this forum, go into project-specific discussion. Every project has its own weaknesses and strength. For Kulu, we have now taken the decision that, yes, it's a project that we want to embrace. But you know, it's a matter where a number of things are still not settled. And you have to have a comprehensive look at it, and you have to have security for a number of these elements of the project before you can actually link in completely. But the first step was very necessary, that we as government say, yes, that project is helping us to get out of the squeeze for power shortages. So let's embrace it. Otherwise, the private sector would always turn around and say, "Now, where are you guys? You know, you want the project, but you are not coming to the table." And I think that is what we said. Let us commit to the project, realizing what the risks are and that the deal is not yet clinched. But now it is easier to negotiate in a proper way. And of course, your worries that it is not viable is some people say it is, some people say it is not. But from our perspective now, we say let's embrace the project, let's get out of the squeeze. It would be more expensive to have outages, to have power cuts. But we can discuss it, of course. You know, we have started the public discussion, and I think it's fine now. sometimes you have to bite the bullet and then turn the page, get going instead of get stuck. SME development, yes, I think I agree with you. It's good to hear that you support it. You will probably see in the statement that mentorship and capacity building for SMEs is a significant element that we want to embark on. It goes without saying that SMEs have difficulties to access finance, access services, and do complex things, legal matters in big deals. Marketing is always often difficult for SMEs. So the way how we link SMEs into value chains, where a big corporate links up with a small SME, we need to make sure that the big corporate assists with the marketing, the more complex legal issues, and let the SME do what they are best at, and that's manufacture one commodity or whatever. So the way we link, the way we pass on capacity and knowledge to SMEs is crucial and part of the approach that we are taking. Thank you.
Can I just respond to debt? I think the entire capitalist system is based on debt. I don't know how many of us are familiar with that. In as much as we should not burden future generations with borrowings, what we need to do is to make sure whether it's consumer debt, whether it's internal debt or external debt, that you have got an optimal structure in terms of your debt. Because if you say, guys, all our spending as a business or as a government, we're only going to finance through our income, through taxes, that's going to be a sad day. So when you run a business and when you run a government of a country, you need to some extent have some debt or some borrowings. As long as you clear these borrowings are consistent with my long-term growth targets, or these borrowings are consistent with my desired levels of public debt that I want to take on. So there's nothing wrong to have debt. This is how you actually propel, this is how you move on countries. And many people look at government debt in Namibia and think it's a big thing. It's so small compared to the rest of the world. If you go to the biggest economy in the world and get the US, they sit with a public debt almost in excess of 100% to gross domestic product. Our numbers are actually, our macro position is in a very healthy state. That's why I was saying we should probably be brave, but I can understand if you down the line see some things, maybe it's time to be more cautious about that. So which I appreciate. But we shouldn't be worried about public debt. This is how you propel countries.
I'd also just like to add something to what Johannes has said. Moody's has recently reaffirmed our credit rating as a country, and I'm sure most of you know that they rate most of the countries in the world. And there's a very telling statement that they made that Namibia has the capacity and the financial management in place to take on more debt by the government, as long as that debt is spent on productive infrastructure, job creation. We will be in trouble if there's a large spike in debt and we get none of those benefits. That's when they would start looking at us more negatively.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any final questions in the audience? We are just about done with time. It's done with the debate. And it's now just before 1:45. Any final questions before we continue?
Thank you, Honourable Minister. My name is Schimming-Chase. I've got a quick question regarding credit ratings and debt. Considering the conditions currently south of the Orange River, has the Honourable Minister and government identified a pain threshold for the relationship which our capital markets currently have with South Africa? I.e., just as the Namibian dollar is pegged to the rand, our government securities are pegged to the South African yield curve. Thus, God forbid that South Africa is downgraded to non-investment grade and even further downgraded, that could have an adverse effect to our interest costs. Thus, basically, is this relationship long-lasting? Thank you.
Okay, our take for now is that our neighbors in the south are in a subdued fashion, but their credit rating is still better than ours. It is one peg above us, and they have a stable outlook at that level. So from that point of view, we were comforted that it will not go too bad in the near future. The second thing I think is the peg and the relationship that our currency and our capital market has with South Africa induced a significant amount of resilience into our economy. But it is, of course, still a fact that the South African rand, like the Australian dollar or the Canadian dollar or the Brazilian currency, is a soft currency. And we have to, as a developing country, live with that risk. What we are saying is a policy which would isolate us in the region as a Lone Star economy is much more volatile, much more exposed to external risk than a peg and a relation of the capital markets with South Africa. So it did us well, and for now, and in the foreseeable future, we do not see that must change. I think it is important that we have that stability, that we have that ease of trade in capital with South Africa, so we don't foresee any change in that policy.
Sorry, I'm not trying to create a dialogue, but if you look at Botswana, Botswana currently has a crawling peg with the rand. However, the capital markets are purely segregated. They do not benchmark their securities off of the South African yield curve. Now, what I'm trying to say is, has government thought of moving in that direction, having our securities stand alone, rather than having us potentially be dragged down by South Africa being downgraded at some point, if it happens?
Yeah. Well, just to repeat, we see the wrong trend in South Africa, but I don't think that we can, for now, take the step to delink completely. I think it's still more favorable for us to remain linked to that yield curve than to divorce from it and create our own.
I think I totally agree with the Minister, because the benefits of being pegged totally outweigh the benefits of being decoupled from the currency. And if you talk about capital markets and you focus only on the yield curve, I'm wondering whether you're totally ignoring the equity side of that equation. Or are you also saying we need to... So are you also saying that, because the yield curve is only talking about the interest-bearing instruments, and you seem to be forgetting that the capital markets is something called like the stock exchange. Are we saying that we should also decouple those parts, which is quite dangerous? I totally agree with the Minister that we probably better where we are at this point in time.
That concludes that point. Do we have it? We have one more question, and then we will wrap up this very short one.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniel from A&D Technology. Honorable Minister, I would like to comment you, or just to comment you to say that for the mass housing, it's a very good, the amount of money that you have allocated is good. But then the other thing is that I'm supposed to, or sort of not clear of this. As for SMEs now, the issue that's there as well, SME is being sorted out, but then also the issue that's there is the lack of office space. Office space in terms of what if did the minister actually consider servicing land, both which is where businesses, small businesses can actually, they should be able to. I think where small businesses should be able to afford, and also for individuals as well. Because mass housing, I don't think, yes, it is effective, but service land is also going to help us small businesses and also individuals as well. So I don't know if mass housing is included in the budget here. If it is, then it's very difficult.
Thank you. I think this is an important question, but mass housing does not include office space. I think it's more almost exclusively residential housing. But you are right. I think we are experiencing a very steep spiral up in prices of land, both for residential and industrial purposes. And we believe that the main reason for that problem is to be found in the demand and supply equation. Our local authorities are, for whatever reason, not supplying enough service land, and it spirals up the price. Now, how to solve it? We have created a special cabinet committee that looks at the whole problem of land availability, land prices, and how we can intervene to bring it back into affordability ranges for all, whether it is residential land or industrial land. It's a very important question that needs to be addressed in a very focused and determined way. And I can just assure you that that cabinet committee, that special cabinet committee, under the chairmanship or chair, what do you call it, when the chairman, the prime minister is a lady? Chairpersonship. But it doesn't tell the story, it's chair ladyship. So I want the prime minister to help us to get a handle on the problem. But basically what I'm telling you is we believe it's a demand and supply question. If we were in a situation where the local authorities supply more service land than is needed, the price will fall. But it's not the case. We continuously, perpetually have too little. The reasons why that is so are complex. There's urbanization taking place, there's economic growth taking place, industrial growth, so demand is higher than supply. But you're right, we have to look at it, and we are doing that. Secondly, there is a scheme for SMEs in the Ministry of Trade and Industry. We call it the Sites and Premises Scheme, where we make industrial or trading space available to SMEs so that they can have a place for which to trade or for which to manufacture whatever they need. It's the SME tailored scheme that supports SMEs by making that space available for them. And it's a regional program through which we also give effect to decentralization, that these spaces are made available all over the country instead of only in the capital or the coast where most people are busy with industrial activities. Thank you.
We have two more questions from the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister and the panelists. My name is Aina Ngulu. I'm a Namibian citizen and have the pleasure of running Namibia Asset Management. I like what you said in your maiden speech, Honorable Minister, we touched on two things, one of which was transparency and accountability. And with accountability, I want to perhaps say, when you sympathize with the SMEs and the business community, whereby when it comes to tax administration, the assessment of be it VAT returns or tax returns take too long, I think it's unfair to the business community, and especially the SMEs. And therefore, I just want to urge the ministry under your leadership to just look into that. The second thing is the introduction of transfer duty on sales of shares by companies or into which a company has got property in it. We have made a submission as the Association of Unit Trust in Namibia last year already, because we saw challenges, particularly when it comes to the administration thereof, and of the view that potentially that Act introduces double tax for individuals and certainly corporates that trades in companies under which property is a component of such a company. And therefore, we just want to urge, again, the ministry under your leadership to please just look at our submission. We've already made that submission. We are in the process of making a second submission to that same issue. I thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ernest. Schlettwein. Honorable Minister, I just want to find out from a practical sense, with reference to SMEs, private sector, what we do on a Monday morning scenario, basically, for us to access all the valuable opportunities that you have presented for us. Is there some kind of forum where we can deliberate with the powers that be, where we can actually access these opportunities and also help our country at the end of the day to meet the certain targets like a Vision 2030 and NDP 411?
Thank you. The first question dealt with VAT returns, and I agree. We have to improve that turnaround time to avoid SMEs being squeezed in a cash flow problem. I think it's a fair comment. And my people are sitting here. They take note. And remember the temperature in the kitchen, eh? So I think we have to work on it, and it's an issue that has been with us for long. And I don't want to repeat the reasons why we have to do these audits and those things, but they are also necessary. But I think we can improve them through technology or through capacity building. We are seized with it. Then your question on the unit trust, that submission of yours is in fact the reason why it is not yet promulgated. We have taken it on board and want to engage, see how we can improve it. But again, it's a principal question. Do we want to pull through with a system where we engage, or where we tax these capital gains that are made by selling shares, but all properties, all licenses? And for the sake of the principle, we are determined to pull through. If there are some unintended side effects, like your problem of being double taxed in a certain circumstance, bring them to us. We have to fix it. That's not the intention. So that's the unintended consequence of what we wanted to do to address the principle. So thank you very much, and we are looking forward to get your second submission. The question that concerned how do we carry on this type of dialogue from here to the future, I think is a very important one. We have, I think, as a government, but as a ministry also taken the issue seriously, and we want to deepen the dialogue with you, our partner in the economy, whatever sector it is, whether it is the pension and capital markets, or tax, or banking, or insurance, non-banking. I think if we want to have a legal framework and policy framework within which we all agree that is the best way we can go ahead, I can only get that by talking to you and engaging you. And I hope that I will be able to see you at more sector-specific engagements where we flesh out these legal frameworks, but then also at more general fora where we can listen to each other and talk about how to improve the situation. I agree that dialogue once a year is probably not enough. We have to do it more frequently, but I intend, as I said, to have it in a layered way, that we talk sector-specific with our technical people, that we can make concrete proposals and accept them and translate them into need be a law or a policy. And then we take the next step up to see how that fits into the whole policy for growing our economy and reaching our targets, be it on the economic side, be it on the human side. So thank you for the suggestion, and I'm happy to follow through with it.
We unfortunately have to wrap up our conversation now. Last one. The panelists seem quite fine with the timing, so shall we just continue?
My name is Schlettwein. I'm an African Namibian. Of the SMEs and the bulk infrastructure services for mass housing. If there's not bulk infrastructure services, there cannot be mass housing. There's a book coming out, Be Like an African Elephant and Act Like One. Africans can design, manufacture, and build their own houses. Is there room in the Minister of Finance that I can do a PowerPoint presentation for you how to address mass housing on a proper way? For SMEs, I'm an SME. I've done it from Cape to Cairo for Africa.
Is there room?
Well, there's always room. But I think what the statement actually wants to say is we in Africa must become more serious when it comes to innovation. We are not, and it has been shown also in China. China is not that strong in innovation. They copy good what others have innovated. But we must take that quantum leap into getting ourselves enabled to create new things. If I look at Namibia, how many patents have we registered in the last year? I don't know if we have made one. So that's weakness you have identified. But this forum is not for you and me to solve my diary. You call and then we have a dialogue and you can bring me your proposal. We are open to listen to you.
Thank you very much to all of the panelists. Thank you for your contributions, Honourable Minister. I'd like to thank you particularly for really bringing some lively debate and interesting metaphors and analogues that I think we will remember for time to come. I think with that, if there are any very strong feelings for a concluding remark.
I'd just like to reiterate that what the Minister said was that this budget is built on the foundation of previous budgets and all the regulation has been put in place and promulgated. So, and that introduces stability into our fiscus and our economy. That you know that tomorrow there's not going to be all of a sudden a new law that's going to change the way we've been doing business or living the last 10, 25 years. And I think that stability bodes well for Namibia going forward, politically, economically, financially.
Thank you. Adeline?
Minister, from my side, I'm just really looking forward to debating and discussing the new tax legislation with you.
You opened the door, right? Okay.
I think it's Easter. I'm sure we are sitting on packed cars, ready to go. So enjoy Easter. And when you do consume, just try to consume Namibian-made goods.
Local is lekker indeed. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm now going to hand it back to our MC to continue with this.
Not to repeat what I said. Not to repeat what Afra said. Not to repeat what Afra said, I would like to thank our panelists, Honorable Minister, and all of our panelists today for the very engaging discussion. Thank you very much and for taking your time to spend this afternoon with us. To our sponsors, KPMG, Simonis, NCCI, and Prime Focus, we really thank you for carrying this event over the past 5 years. We can see that it has actually grown from strength to strength, and we have had quite value-adding and eye-opening discussions this afternoon, and we really appreciate that. Our moderator, Afra, Schimming-Chase, thank you very much for moderating our discussion today. To all our invited guests, we know today is the 2nd of April, the day before Easter, like the Honorable Minister said, and people could be driving to the north or to the coast, and you spent a few months on the Thank you for spending our afternoon with us. But before we end our proceedings this afternoon, we would like to give special thank you gifts for our panelists today. And we'll be handing over our gifts to our panelists this afternoon. The rumor has been the minister loves hunting, so as she walks up the stage, everybody might have seen everything that has happened today, and it's a very beautiful event that she has organized. She's been running around and calling people, doing a lot of hard work, and we would like to express our most sincere gratitude to her, and we are going to dedicate this for her. Thank you very much, Henry. Could you give her a round of applause? Lunch will be served as soon as we are done with these proceedings, and it's on a buffet basis. But before we do that, could we rise for the AU